CJ, thank you very much, and welcome to the Brown and Black podcast. My name is Jack Rico. This is Mike Sargent. We got a chance to see The Neutral Ground. Interestingly enough, one of the reasons I said yes was because I thought you were Latino. Because you look like a Latino.
I know. Welcome to everyone who sees me on the street.
Holy smokes, man. Talk about chameleon.
Talk about it.
Oh.
My mom was Filipino. My dad is Black. So I just spend most of my time looking functionally Dominican. But that was, that definitely surfaced in this film of, there are some very unsafe places that I go in this film, both emotionally unsafe and physically unsafe. And I do recognize that sometimes the things that we captured of folks talking to me, it is clear based on what they are saying that they do not understand they're talking to a Black person. When one of those neo-Confederates is like, the blacks are still on the plantation because they're controlled by the Democratic Party. It's like, bro, I don't know if you know that you're talking to a Black man. And I think mixed people in America have that experience all the time.
So can we unpack that and just catch up with Roy really quick about your look, which is not, I guess, a traditional Black look, but it's a look that's a mixed race look with Black. And I think certain people in America, I don't know how to relate Black and then someone who is Black like you, CJ. Can you unpack that for me, and how much does that play into The Neutral Ground, the movie that you guys did?
I need 82 minutes to unpack that. I'm laughing at how diplomatic just no one's ever said to me, you don't look traditionally Black. And it is not inaccurate.
CJ is Black, but he's at the family reunion and the old folks are going to go, well, what is you?
If you Black,
we know what you is, but specifically, baby, who your people is?
That's how I know.
From?
That's how I know when someone's going over it. White people, when they're going over it in their head, would just be like, "Where are you from?" But Black folks would be like, "Who are you people? Where are they from?" I can tell when people are making that calculation. But for this film, and I'm interested in hearing what Roy thinks on this, but for this film, I think, I think it allowed me a certain level of safety and a certain level of white racists dropping their guard. I think the success of this film, besides spotlighting Black resistance, besides spotlighting, the insanity of how long white supremacy makes democracy wait, I think the success of this film is how many snapshots we got of just naked white supremacy, whiteness in its natural element. And I think some folks are like, well, I'm just talking to this sweet little Mexican boy. Right. And they may not have said the things they said on camera. If I looked more, if I looked more unquestionably Black.
Right.
Yeah. I think that's an important part of it. When you're doing these types of pieces, it's part of the reason why at the Daily Show, we send Jordan Klepper to talk to all of them Trump supporters.
Because he's one of them. That's what they think. He's going to
get a different sauce. It's just going to be a different, the energy is just going to be different. And I think what CJ was able to do, which is so beautiful in this piece, is because the people are disarmed by not fully knowing what it made the conversation less guarded and they were less defensive, which means they were more open, which gives CJ the opportunity to swoop in and really attack those curiosities that brings up, because I really feel like he was able to get something that a lot of other people wouldn't have necessarily been able to, like minority, like CJ is like right around there with Don Lemon, where I know you're Black, but you make me feel good. So I'm gonna talk to you. You know, like, and I'm saying that jokingly, but there's something comforting in that, and it really gave him a strategic advantage, because they didn't realize that CJ's father is from the struggle. He is one of the realest.
I love your dad. I got to tell you, I loved your dad.
Ooh. Oh yeah.
That's him. That's him. He's been critical race theory since the 70s. So I think, you know, I think he might be recognizable to Black and mixed kids who grew up with, you know, a dad who moved them to the white suburbs. That there's a balancing act that I think some of those dads do that are like, damn, you are not getting Blackness in our world. So I have to really bring the history at the breakfast table. And I think that's what folks are getting from that scene. I'm aware that the genre that I'm in, documentaries where a person grabs a microphone and runs into dangerous places and is like, so you believe some bullshit, you know, like that's a genre of white men, you know, that's the Michael Moores and that's the Morgan Spurlocks, you know, and there's not as big of a cost for them in going into those spaces. And as much as I'm privileged by having sort of an ambiguous look, that doesn't mean the cost to my soul is different. You know, that doesn't mean that I'm not spending the whole time in the sunken place of having to smile to neo-Confederate folks who want to tell me that slavery was not a bad time, or, you know, who are saying the N-word off mic, or, you know, camping out in these spaces, going to Charlottesville, chasing down white supremacy, and then living with white supremacy in all these documents. So it is I don't want to make it sound like, ooh, it's very easy because I look brownish. It's like, people let down their guard, but the cost internally is absolutely the same.
Yo, you know what I forgot to ask you, bro? And I know I'm not supposed to be asking you no questions now, bro.
Let's go. You and me
How
just
you doing,
interviewing
Roy?
each
I'm
other.
the new co-host that just got added. I just got hired on.
Oh, snap. You guys didn't realize we could do our own Black and Brown. This is the takeover.
Yeah,
Boom!
Jackie hit me up. I did all the paperwork. But I never asked you this, man. Did being able to do this shit, like, how do you not get mad? I'm gonna be honest. I be on them field pieces for 2 days. I'd be ready to cuss people out by the end of day 2, day 3. How did you deal with your mentals, bro? Like, just absorbing white supremacy for 4 or 5 years straight.
Because they do talk, actors always talk about when they inhabit, like there's been this myth about Heath Ledger that he was with the Joker for so long that supposedly it led him to his death, even though I think that's greatly exaggerated. But in your case, this is real, man. This is not inhabiting a fictitious character. This is white supremacy. So great question.
I think, thank you, Roy.
You're hired, Roy.
You're hired, Roy.
Roy, you're a great interviewer. You have a great voice. Forget Mike's voice. It's interesting that you asked that today. I think all the time about one of the greats, Ava DuVernay. She, in talking about 13th, she talks about this one piece of footage. And if you've seen the film, you know this footage of, it's a piece of footage of a Black man getting pushed around by a white mob. And he's in a suit and he's got a top hat, and the hat keeps falling off, and he keeps picking up the hat and putting it back on. And for her, it was really important to have that scene because there's something about the strength and the courage of somebody who is having their life threatened. You know, it's just important for him to put his hat back on. And she talked about trying to take care of her audience by not showing them kill him seconds later. And she talked about having to detox on her own from the damage just that scene and scenes like that actually did to her psyche. And to be honest, I haven't taken that space yet. You know, it's been go, go, go. And partly because white supremacy keeps having these sequels, keeps being like, and now we're in Charlottesville, keep filming. And now we're attacking the Capitol, change the end. You know, like, because white supremacy is nonstop, I haven't taken that time. And it's interesting you asked today, because a few hours before this, I was making lunch and watching footage of the Capitol riot hearings and watching the extended footage of those fools attacking the Capitol. And, you know, we have a day job on the Daily Show where we joke about this stuff, but for the first time, I broke down in my kitchen and sat on the floor and just was weeping. And that is because I think there is something that I have not dealt with about what Charlottesville and all of this white supremacy does when it builds up inside you. And as a documentarian, you're like, I must capture it. We'll work it in the edit. But you do not think about the thing that Ava's talking about. Is like, yeah, but you are also holding that in you. And, you know, so all of a sudden, some footage of white supremacist attack in the Capitol that sounds exactly like Charlottesville and feels exactly like the same as sending me to some other place.
I could unpack a lot from your answer there, or ask you to, but I'm curious, and I want to hear from both of you. I often feel, and Jack probably has heard me say that, you know, comedy and science fiction and horror have something in common in that they, you know, they can talk about the human condition and, you know, maybe obscure it a bit, and you can say more. To approach a topic like this and to include and keep all the humor that you have about it, I'm curious, kind of a two-part question. You know, do you think, I'm convinced more and more that the best way to teach and educate is through, you know, something entertaining, you know, and humor is maybe the only way to deal with just how ugly, and I mean, maybe that's the only way to deal with it. But I'm also curious your thoughts as comedians. You know, what comedians do, or comedy really does, is make us look at ourselves in a way like science fiction, in a way where we can laugh, but we laugh because it's true. So I just want to know your thoughts about comedy and truth, how they work together, and especially exposing, you know, really unpleasant truths.
To me, good friend of mine, comedian Mike Birbiglia, he said something that's always stuck with me, in that jokes only work when we all agree on the premise. And the thing that's starting the fissure that I'm starting to see in our society now is that we don't even necessarily agree on what the truth is. And so that is what's making it harder. I can't speak for sci-fi, because sci-fi gets to draw, they get to set up a different world with different rules and then parallel it to us. So sci-fi to me is a little bit, it's able to reach as many, if not more, because you set up new rules that everyone agrees upon. Where comedy, the comedy that I like at least, is rooted in the reality that we already share. So if I go on stage and go, yeah, bop, 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 CDC, the mask, wearing a mask, it's okay to wear. If somebody in the audience don't rock with masks, or they think masks are stupid and they think I'm a sheep for wearing a mask, you don't even care about what I'm gonna say on the other side of that. So I think that's probably what's made it more difficult, but that also is what makes it more rewarding when you're able to thread that needle. And I think that's the thing that really, that's what I still enjoy on the Daily Show. You know, it to me, it is a little bit more difficult, but you know, when you're able to capture that tone in the right way, it's magical. And I'm sorry to keep throwing praise on CJ, but this is something that, you know, a lot of people have died for and are still dying for, and to still be able to tonally find that,
it's
like,
it's almost impossible, Roy.
Yeah, it's like, but even if you agree with the Confederacy, all right, let me just hear this out a little bit. Let me see where this like it's the perfect type of doc where even if you don't agree with the premise, you're still going to be on board with it.
It's disarming.
Yeah. I don't have a vocabulary. That's exactly the word.
Originally, like, the basic format is, let's put sugar in the medicine, right? Like that's the original reason that jokes are in this. Throughout a conversation I had multiple times with my producing partner Darcy, with Roy, with my editor, was, how do we keep white folks in their seats for 82 minutes? Folks who grew up with the white Southerners, who grew up with the Lost Cause, you know, middle of the road white folks, liberal whites who are like, oh God, now they're talking about the North. You know, white teens who are looking at pictures of lynchings in this film. So the whole time I'm like, how do we build the machine so that when the temperature gets too hot, we let the steam off a little bit, so white folks don't feel like they got to get up and get some air, that we keep them in their seats. So that's part of why certain jokes are in there. You know, that's why we're right before you hear Alexander Stevens's true thoughts about slavery being the cornerstone, we're laughing about his ashy ass lips. You know, like that's the reason that some of those jokes are in there. But I've only recently come to this thing that I think Mike is saying, which is, it's not just that we're hiding the ball or sweetening the medicine. I think comedy is a language uniquely suited for expressing certain frequencies of horror. You know, it's like some of us have friends who only curse in other languages because they're like, if when I'm really mad, I got to go to French because it doesn't sound right in English. This is the only way I can express certain levels of outrage. And I think it's the same with comedy, that, you know, there are moments in the film where something so horrific or something so ignorant happens where you're like, I have no words. And that is when we use a joke. And, you know, coming from The Daily Show and working with folks who I think are legends like Roy, and working in a language where it's, you know, a lot about jokes per minute. My big insecurity in making this film was, dang, it's not funny enough. It's not funny enough. And then when the first reviews came in and are like, this film is actually funny, or this film is occasionally funny, or using words like this film is wry or deadpan, to me as a comedian, I'm like, that's not funny. That doesn't bang like comedy. That doesn't hit. But what I'm realizing is that all the reviews that are like, this film is deeply harrowing, and are able to talk about levels of horror that I've only talked about with other Black people, I'm realizing that they were able to absorb that because the comedy is letting it get into their bloodstream. The comedy is like being able to package a type of horror that they otherwise don't have capacity for.
When I look at The Neutral Ground, I'm also looking at the bigger picture context here, which is that this is a film about the power of storytelling and about how the narrative is controlled. And whoever controls the narrative controls history. And whoever controls history controls the power. So when you look at it like this, can you explain to me how the Lost Cause became the American ideology, the American ideology almost for the whole world? Why was this story one of the greatest stories ever told?
You're right. It's the stickiest story that we have in America besides Columbus discovered America, right? You know, it's like in 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue is number one, and number two is it was about states' rights. There's no other stickier story that's stuck around. Part of it is
nothing but a spinoff.
It's in the same universe. It's in the white supremacy.
The metaverse. Right.
Exactly.
If Universal Studios had to do this, that's what it would do.
Exactly. The white culture metaverse.
Yes. We have, you know, we're on number 7 right now. I mean,
it's like another Fast and Furious, right?
You're watching the Capitol riot and you're like, wasn't this number 2? And it's like, no, this is number 12. But yeah, I mean, Roy and I joked in the edit about, for real, if I lost a fight and someone gave me the opportunity to tell the story of that fight, you bet I'm going to take some liberties, you know? And I think it throws it on, you know, everyone wants to say the winners write history. And so how did the Confederacy? And it's like, I love this moment right now because it's like, because the Confederacy did not lose. The Confederacy lost on the battlefield, but all of their insurrectionists didn't get punished. These folks returned to Congress. These folks became, in New Orleans, two ex-Confederates who were members of the White League out killing police officers in the street and attacking the biracial government. They became the mayor and they became the state Supreme Court justice. And those two men are in the documents dedicating the Lee Monument. All of their worst criminals became the leaders of these governments and built monuments to their own story. Right? Like if the Capitol rioters tomorrow got $100,000 together and put up a monument, it would be insane to us, the idea that monument could stay up long enough that people would forget that that's just a version of the story. But when it comes to Civil War, everyone forgets that was just a weird version that the losers spun when they were able to get back in power.
Wow. The notion of criminals rising to power seems familiar.
Weird. Where did we
somehow?
Strange.
It seems weird, you know.
Where did we
and no accountability, huh?
And insurrectionists being branded as patriots. Where does that?
Yeah, wait. I've heard this before. So
the thing that was most disappointing, like to CJ's point, is that we didn't even get to really delve into critical race theory and how the lie is being doubled down upon. Like like we was just, hey, would you mind just talking about some of the Black history? Nope. Matter of fact, we taking out all the Black history that was in there just for asking, you bastard.
And the Latino history and so many
Yes.
other cultures' history,
Yes.
erasing us essentially from reality.
That's exactly it,
Gaslighting all of us.
It is gaslighting by legislation. Look, like these numbers may have changed, but the last time I looked in July, 14 states have proposed bills for voter disenfranchisement. All right, 14 states. 10 of those same states have also tried to pass critical race theory bans. A number of those same states have also passed like anti-trans legislation. So you are absolutely right. This is gaslighting by legislation. They are tailoring a racial harm against a community and then depriving us of the legal language to describe what has been done to us. That's how they gutted the voting rights law, and that is what is happening right now. Critical race theory bans, or as I call them, dumb laws, because they're trying to make our kids dumb. These are not just like a strategy to win an election. They are gutting civil rights. And that's what's up.
So then tell me about pop culture's role in propagating the lost cause, white supremacy, throughout America.
When you think of the glorious South, what are you thinking of?
Well, hey, y'all.
Gone with the Wind. I mean, I think...
Yeah.
I do declare.
Oh, I do declare. And the dresses. You're not thinking of a stinking place where most white people are desperately poor and the elite has run in an entire society that they've gotten these poor whites to buy into that's built on rape and murder and selling of people. You're not thinking that's the real South. But we think that it was this grand place with these verandas and the old live oak trees. Like we think of that because of pop culture. We think of that because of Gone with the Wind. We think of that because of, Shirley Temple's The Littlest Rebel. Like all of these things are pop culture. And guess what? Guess where they were made? They were made in the North. Birth of a Nation was shot in LA. So, I mean, I think that's the crime, right? Like, this is a true crime where we're like, who put this shit in the history? Who broke in the vault of history, took the real thing, replaced it with the forgery? And then you realize the whole time the inside man is white Northerners.
Well, building on what Jack just said, because it led me to this, and I mentioned earlier, I kind of feel, pop culture, most people get their opinions from somebody else. Most people get their knowledge, history from movies or TV or maybe even Twitter. But the only way to combat pop culture, the only way to combat that type of, dissemination of information or misinformation is with documentaries, is with doing the same thing. So I want to know your thoughts on, especially because, you're documentary filmmakers now. You're not just comedians. You're not just, you're documentary filmmakers. And I feel we're in the age of the documentary where documentaries have become, it's another thing. We all know the news is biased depending on you're on the left or right. Reality show has nothing to do with reality. I feel documentaries are kind of the last place where you can really get at the truth.
Some semblance of truth, yeah.
Right. So I want to know what your thoughts are on that. And, and you, especially you, Roy, like why you got behind CJ to do this.
So when the young Don Lemon, TJ Holmes stepped to me about this project, I said, young Don Lemon, the issue, I guess, for me was, at the Daily Show, we're really only able to delve into why something happened or what the solution is. We don't have enough time to do both. And this documentary was an opportunity to do just that. And the thing that I didn't know, and this stuff had been shot before CJ brought it to me, was also his own exploration into self and his own identity and his own relationship with Blackness before going out and discovering all of this anti-Blackness that was happening, across the country. I'm thankful that streamers exist and they allow stories to be told with a degree of nuance. We would not have this plethora of documentaries if we did not have all of these plethora of avenues for them to be distributed upon. Because, You know, I'm old enough to remember in my day, documentary day was Sunday.
Yeah.
That was the day. If you was gonna watch something heavy, it either came on like 11 o'clock in the morning after Charles Kuralt, if you didn't want to watch football, or on either side of 60 Minutes would be the heavy stuff. And then every February, they would show Roots on PBS over the course of,
That's right.
4 or 5 days. You got your knowledge in these specific blocks if the documentary was in tune with the time. Like you would get your MLK docs in January. You would get all your wokey woke women's rights stuff in the spring. And like now you can have anything about anyone, about any time period at any time, and you can go and find that stuff. I also think to a degree, you know, there are a lot of opinions about movies that portray Black pain, and there are a lot of opinions about the creators who use Black pain to further their message and profit, blah, 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 blah. Because of the blatant erasure of Black history within our textbooks, the history has to exist somewhere. And the documentaries are important. But I also believe that to a degree, some of this scripted stuff from Black creators, whether you label it problematic or not, for me is a something better than nothing proposition. Because that's also going to reach some of the people who may not want to sit and watch a documentary. Ava DuVernay's The 13th, it's not funny. It wasn't supposed to be. It's powerful. It did what it was supposed to do.
Right.
But we also have to respect how people absorb information a number of different ways. Everybody doesn't learn the same. Everybody doesn't listen to this. That's why certain school teachers vibe with you better than others, because it's how they deliver the message. And I think, you know, to a degree, as you know, you can create a documentary and call yourself a journalist, but to a degree, you are an educator. And I think that's part of where, you know, CJ, I don't even remember what grade you taught in New Orleans public
Middle
school,
school,
but
6th grade.
so you gotta have a little pizzazz
personality.
To you.
Yeah.
You can't Ben Stein, Ferris Bueller that shit.
I mean, I agree with Roy. We got to go pop culture. We got to go pop on this, right? Like my goal was to make a deep, heavy documentary that is unsparing in how many details it has about how white supremacy built itself into our country. But I wanted to make it fun as hell. You know, I wanted to make it accessible. Movies change history. Gone with the Wind rewrote an entire generation's memory of the past. More people know Gone with the Wind than they know actual history, right? Like Gone with the Wind changed race relations in a way that we have been unable to do about when people think about the past. Birth of a Nation was single-handedly responsible for the rebirth of the KKK.
Yeah.
So we got to bring our game hard to be able to combat those movies. The generations of filmmakers now need to be making stuff that can undo what those movies have done. And there are articles now that are like, yo, where are all the Black people who make Civil War movies? And one of them is right here. And our goal is to try to basically like flip what the UDC did. In this film, you see that the United Daughters of the Confederacy were successful at changing all of our textbooks by funding film, monuments, and getting their narratives in textbooks. So you bet my focus is on having a fun, harrowing film that kids rock with and that any teacher can put on and be like, welcome to history class, even if your governor is making your books illegal.
Yeah, they're like their own national endowment of the arts.
Well, I guess my last question is, and maybe you've already answered it, doing something like this, you know, you kind of laid out what your goal is, but who would you say is your target audience? Do you think this is more important for white people to see or for Black people to see? What's your thought on that? Who do you want to see it, and what would you like them to get out of it?
For me, you know, and CJ made the film, but for me, it's the white people, you know, kind of that 35 and under, the ones you still might be able to flip, and the ones whose minds haven't been completely molded into something that believes the lie. To me, those are the people. I'm not sure how much you can rehabilitate or permeate the mind of someone who still shows up to Confederate war reenactments. I don't know if you can do anything for them. But that 12-year-old or that 8-year-old or that 17-year-old who doesn't have a lot of black friends because of where they grow up, they could see something like this, and maybe it could help just make you question what you've been taught. Just at least question it.
I want to take you back to like the feeling that we felt in 2020 of that outrage about being like, white people, what are you doing? When are you talking to your other white people about all the shit y'all need to talk about to fix this, right? Like, we are doing this, but you need to do your work. And that feeling was what I was feeling when I started making this film. So much years of making this film was about like, this film is for white people, and I don't feel bad about it. This film is for white people who will not face the truth. Will you face the truth now that you see it in the documents? No. Will you face the truth now that we show you footage of people getting their necks nailed on in 2016? No. Will you see it now that you've seen people executed in front of you in 2020? No. Right? So like, part of me making this film is like, white people, what does it take to make you see the truth? I used to have a note card on my bulletin board as motivation that said, to make them see. That was my motivation. We got to make these white people, to make them see. I'm not talking about all white people, but I'm certainly not talking about black people. Black people are not the ones who are like, I don't know if white supremacy exists. I then replaced that note card with this that says, to see ourselves. That is the change. You make a film for 5 years, almost 6, eventually, and you start off trying to make white people see, eventually you're like, what kind of film is just trying to make white people see the thing that they haven't seen for centuries? So for me now, the final edit of the film, what you are seeing is a film that is not just about trying to make white people confront white supremacy, but it's trying to make non-white people feel powerful. It's trying to make non-white people feel that your reality is validated, that the sense of outrage that you have about the past and the stuff that is still happening is right. And that we're showing you a whole film over 5 years about what black and brown people have been able to do together to change their world. We're not waiting for monuments to come down. We're out there just pulling them down, right? Like, we're out there trying to defund police departments. So I want white folks to feel responsible and held to task, and black folks to feel powerful.
Wow. This is, I like, we could do 3 shows with you, just so you know.
Yeah.
I mean,
no, it's cool. We got the next one, man. We got the Roy and CJ Black and Brown.
Yeah.
We stole it. We Columbus this. We came in here in Columbus.